Your dog is staring at you right now. Not at the food bowl. Not at the door. At you. And somewhere in the back of your mind, you've probably asked yourself the question you never say out loud. Does it actually love me? Or is it running a calculation? And I'm just the answer that keeps working? Most people assume the answer is obvious. Of course, dogs love us. Look at the tail. Look at the eyes. Look at how it waits by the door for 8 hours and loses its mind the moment you walk in. But here's what the science actually says. The emotion is real. The wiring behind it, however, is not what you think. It starts somewhere between 15,000 and 40,000 years ago. The exact number is still debated. What isn't debated is this. A wolf walked toward a human fire. Not because it was trained to. Not because it was captured. Because the wolves that could tolerate human proximity ate better, survived longer, reproduced more. The ones that fled every time a human came near, they left no lineage worth speaking of. Evolution didn't build a loving animal. It built an animal that was very, very good at surviving near us. And those two things looked identical from the outside. In 2003, researcher Brian Hare at Harvard, later Duke University, published findings that changed how scientists understood dog cognition. His team ran a deceptively simple experiment. They hid food under one of 2 cups. Then a human pointed at the correct cup. Dogs followed the gesture immediately. Chimpanzees, our closest living relatives, animals with significantly larger brains relative to body size, could not reliably do this. Wolves, raised by humans from birth, could not reliably do this. But dogs could. Puppies with almost no human contact could. The ability to read human social cues was not something dogs learned. It was something that evolved into them, carved into the genome over thousands of years of living beside us. They don't read our pointing finger because they're intelligent. They read it because the dogs that couldn't read it didn't survive as well as the ones that could. But then, in 2015, something happened in a laboratory in Japan that made scientists stop using phrases like mere conditioning. Miho Nagasaki and her team at Azabu University were measuring oxytocin levels, the neurochemical associated with social bonding, in both humans and dogs during interaction. What they found appeared in Science that same year. When dogs made eye contact with their owners, oxytocin levels rose in both the human and the dog. Not a mild increase. The same spike seen between a mother and a newborn infant during the first moments of eye contact. The same biological mechanism. The same neurochemical cascade. The dog didn't learn to feel this. Its brain releases it automatically, the same way a human brain does when it looks at its child. And your brain, on the other side of that gaze, responds in kind before a single conscious thought intervenes. You look at your dog. Your dog looks at you. And both nervous systems, without asking permission, tell you this is someone I belong with. But here is where it gets complicated. Because the same team ran the experiment with wolves raised by humans, wolves that had spent their entire lives in close human contact. Wolves that knew their handlers as well as any dog knows its owner. The eye contact didn't trigger the same response. The mechanism wasn't there. Not at the same level. Not in the same way. What this means is specific and strange. Dogs don't just behave differently from wolves. Their brain chemistry is different. Something in the 15,000 years of living beside us physically rewired how their neurological bonding system works. The evolution didn't just shape behavior. It reached inside the brain and rebuilt the architecture. The question is no longer whether dogs feel something when they look at you. The neurochemical evidence says they do. The question is what to call it. In 2017, a team from the University of Budapest led by Adam McCloskey used fMRI scanning brain imaging on awake, unrestrained dogs. They presented the dogs with the scent of familiar humans, unfamiliar humans, familiar dogs, and unfamiliar dogs. The caudate nucleus, the region of the brain associated with positive expectation, reward, and attachment, activated most strongly to one stimulus. The scent of a familiar human. Not food. Not other dogs. You. Your scent, processed in your dog's brain, activates the same region that lights up in a human brain when it anticipates something deeply wanted. The dog isn't simply associating you with food or walks or comfort. Its reward system is specifically tuned, at a neurological level, to you. There is one more thing the research found, and it is the part that is hardest to explain away. In those same fMRI studies, when dogs were separated from their owners and then reunited, the caudate nucleus didn't just activate. It activated at a level higher than any other stimulus the researchers could introduce. Higher than food, higher than play, higher than the scent of familiar dogs they had grown up alongside. The reunion with you, specifically you, was the most neurologically significant event in the dog's measurable experience. Not because you feed it, not because you represent safety in a general sense. Because somewhere in the architecture of that animal's brain, your presence became the reference point against which everything else is measured. The researchers were careful with their language. They called it strong positive valence, preferential neural activation. They did not call it love. But they also noted that the pattern was indistinguishable from what you would predict if love were the correct word. So here is where the science lands, and where it refuses to go further. The bonding mechanism is real. The neurochemistry matches what we would call love in any other context. The dog's brain treats you as a specific, irreplaceable social anchor, not a food source with a face, not a warm surface to lie against, but you specifically. And yet, the entire architecture of that bond was built by evolution because it was useful, because the animals that bonded most effectively with humans survived the longest. Because the neurological mechanism that makes your dog look at you with what appears to be devotion is the same mechanism that, 15,000 years ago, helped its ancestors not starve to death near a human campfire. Does that make it less real? The researchers who built the neurological case for dog-human bonding are careful not to use the word love in their papers. Not because they don't believe it, but because science requires a level of certainty about interior experience that brain scans cannot yet provide. What the data shows, the mechanism is there. The neurochemistry is real. The brain's reward architecture is specifically calibrated to your presence. What the data cannot show, what it is to be the dog waiting by the door. What is happening in the interior of that animal during the 8 hours you are gone. Whether what it experiences in those moments resembles anything we would recognize. The tail tells you something. The oxytocin spike confirms something. The 15,000-year evolutionary history complicates everything. And that question, whether what your dog feels when it looks at you is love, or the most precise biological replica of love that evolution has ever built, is one the science keeps circling without ever closing. But maybe that question only matters if you believe the origin of something changes what it is. Your own capacity to love was also built by evolution, also carved by survival pressure, also wired into a brain that did not choose its own architecture, did not ask for the neurochemicals it runs on, did not design the reward systems that make certain faces feel irreplaceable. You didn't choose to love the people you love. The mechanism was already there. It activated, and you called it real. The dog looks at you. The oxytocin rises. In both of you, the science calls it a neurochemical response. You can call it whatever you want.